Hello guys and welcome to this tutorial. In this tutorial I'm gonna go over sort of like my process that I normally do whenever I experience something that I really love about the industry, and whether it's games or watching an anime or a movie, whatever the case may be. I usually, sometimes I get like super inspired and just want to try to dissect why I feel that way, and why it was such a great experience. And recently, I played Ori and the Blind Forest, and this is I mean, not all game, but it came out in 2015, and I haven't been able to play a lot of games lately, but finally I got to sit down and sort of like go through the game, and about to start the second game. And so as I'm playing the game, I was like so fascinated by the whole, just by the whole idea of it, and the world, and the art direction, and just everything about it. The music was great. And so every once in a while, I get to experience something like that. And sometimes it's a movie, sometimes it's a new anime that I watch, or a game, and sometimes I just want to like dissect it and see what I could do in order to sort of like play the game as if I was working for this type of IP. And also, practically, I also use that to try to understand how they do things and how to apply it to my work as well. So if I were to, for example, wanted to do some freelance work for them, like illustrations or some stage design, or a background or something, this process that I'm gonna be showing in the tutorial, this is sort of what I normally do to try to tackle that and try to aim a few pieces of my portfolio towards them, just to try to see and see if I can actually manage it. And so I played the game. It was fantastic. I really, really love it. Especially the music. Music was just great. And so I wanted to do this whole process with this because I'm gonna start the second game now, and I think it will be a great time to use the momentum of me playing the games and being inspired to try to, you know, uh, come up and trying to understand it even better. And so that's what the tutorial is gonna be about. And I'm gonna divide it in a few steps, because I wanna break out all the different pieces of the process that I'm using, and um, and then we can start on it. So the first thing that I did was, and I'm in a place where I'm in sort of like in between. I just finished the first game. I'm gonna start the second game maybe in like a day or so, and so I'll actually be working on these pieces and this whole process as I'm playing the second game. But what I wanted to do first is sort of gather pictures that I found from the game, and some concept art that I found, and all this, and sort of like organize it and put it in, just to try to dissect and um, try to break things apart, sort of like reverse engineering some of this stuff. And uh, I, a lot of times, I mean, most of the time I do this in my head, so it's not like I'm 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 doing this constantly. But as I'm looking at an image, whether it's as I'm playing it, or an image that I found on the internet, or something, I look at the image and I try to dissect the things that make it look like the way it looks, and why it looks that way, and the reason for putting things where they're at, and the composition and the colors and all that stuff. So that's sort of like what I want to talk about first, just to give you an idea what goes through my mind when I sort of like look at these pictures. And so I sort of divide them in here into some sections. I have some color grading sections here, concept art, color thumbs, and all that. And so I'm just gonna go around and talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's happening in the in these images here. And it's gonna be sort of like random, because that's sort of how my thoughts go when I'm looking at the images. And so we're just gonna do a little bit of that. And the first thing is like, I just love, and it resonates a lot with me, how how all this just and pretty much the game in general looks like this very wide feel to it, very cinematic. And even though this is not like realistic rendering, it does look like very very cinematic, and it's because of the use of lighting and the ratio of and scale of things and how they place it. And I just think that is so cool. And that's like the very very first thing that actually grabbed me from this game. And it's just like how wide and how horizontal things feel in these images. And so, for example, here, they had this they have the water here as an element in this stage, but the line here of the division from the underwater and the things above is so low that makes it look like very like wide shot. And then the scale of the character, usually we're used to seeing characters like bigger, but in this case, like the character is so small in comparison to like the rest of the back of the environment that it makes it look even bigger. The place. But I also love like how simple the compositions are, and the things that are in the environment are just very in simple. They just the general shapes and the major shapes are very simple, and it's just a very simple, straight up message in each of these images that and throughout the whole game it's just like very very clear on the message that they're trying to bring. Um, Another thing is that also struck me. It's like I love also how they let me find an image that's sort of yeah. So I love how they establish very clear what's foreground, middle ground, and background. And it could be because of the nature of the game. So it's sort of like platformers game. It could be because of that, which makes sense. But I feel like they pushed it, and there may be other games that do this. I don't know because I don't play that much anymore. But I think it's just wonderful to have this very foreground element that sort of it's not just there, it's also there because like when you play the game, like some of this stuff like block your vision to some of the environment stuff, and it's just like it makes it feel as you're playing it to be a little bit more dangerous and more mysterious in a way. But also artistically, I think it's just great to have this separation between the foreground, middle ground, and background here. And the way they do that you can see, every foreground element that you see that is very close to the camera is pretty much blurred. And like you can see here, it's so cool. Like you have this real character here, um, and all these elements in the foreground are pretty much blurred. Then you have the middle ground, which is sharp, and then the background is also blurred. So as you can see here, the background is very blurred. These foreground elements are blurred, and then everything in the middle ground is sharp. And so that gives sort of like a sense of space and just greatness to it, which I think is fantastic and just so whimsical and beautiful. Um, and it's crazy because like, and again, this part here, this section of the tutorial is literally what goes through my head as I'm looking at these images and when I'm thinking about the stuff that I'm gonna do for the pieces and all this stuff. But so it's gonna be a little bit more informal, but you can see some of these screenshots from the game, and it's great that the third thing that we talk about how horizontal things feel and how sort of like cinematic, and then second we talk about how they break up the foreground, middle ground, and background planes, which is very clear and great. And the third thing is that it doesn't look like everything that I'm going to concentrate on the middle ground because that's where we see most of this stuff and it's the more clear. But this stuff is very it's not very well defined in terms of like rendering. So for example, and I'm gonna explain this. So for example, if we look at the top here, and this could be a concept, but it could be also I'm not really sure if it's like an actual in-game shot, but you can see the leaves here, and they're not very. They're just very simple in terms of the rendering. It's just very layered, and your brain sort of like fills up these gaps and information about what this is. And we don't have to think about it. We just look at it and we just know they're leaves, and this is a tree, and you know. But rendering wise, is not. It doesn't have a lot of detail per se. Like when you look at a more in the realistic games, everything looks so noisy and very realistic. It's just like the textures and all that. But this game doesn't have that. It has a very simple style rendering. It does have a lot of color and a lot of elements into the background. So you have the tree trunk, you have grass, you have these plants, magical plants, you have some roots and mushrooms and all this stuff. But all those things are rendered in a very simple way, and so I think that's great because it gives it sort of like a more animated, stylized look. And yeah, so those three things are the major things that really strike me when I play this game and I try to dissect all this information from these images. Now, the other thing is I love how and this is mostly common for every game and animation and games, but I love their colors, the color script pretty much. They have all these colors, sort of like a theme depending on the location that you're at, and that's something that I want to keep in mind as I'm doing my pieces. So we can see that this is like it's not monochromatic, but because you have some warms and all the colors, but as a theme, there's a palette of color, a palette that sort of dominates the environment, and they use also color to accentuate things that maybe your character needs to interact with. So like these little things have this sort of like warm lava fire type of color in this icy environment, and you sort of know that that's something that you need maybe to pay attention to, especially with like the projectiles and all the rest of the stuff. But and I also love like these two color schemes here are very similar, but they give a very different feeling to it. So when I look at this one, it's very warm, cozy, very happy, and I just feel great looking at this image. And it's something that I just want to sit here on the edge and just spend my time there and just chill. But when I look at this one, it's just a very similar color scheme. But when I look at this one, this is like danger, and something else is about to happen. I need to move, and I need to react quicker, and I need to be careful and all that. So it's great how they very similar color scheme. You can bring different emotions to it. But I do love this. I think it's just so warm and nice. So looking at all that, in my mind, I'm sort of dissecting all this information in my head and seeing, okay, they're doing this, they're doing that, and I'm sort of like keeping notes to as to those things. So let's take a look at some of the color scripts here. So these are great. These are just so fantastic. Um, this is something that we're gonna end up doing as well in the tutorial, just to kind of explore what color schemes we wanna try and do. And this is I do this on my studio for the series that I work in, and this is like one of my favorite parts of the pipeline, because you can be very very loose and you're just playing with colors and trying to find and figure out what mood you want to bring with the colors and lighting into the environment. And I think it's a great process. Like I love this one. It's so great. This one is so cool. But they're all great. And this is just some concept art that I found that is actual official concept art. And so yeah, so that's like sort of like the first stage here, gathering some reference. And I don't wanna deviate too much because I'm trying to do I'm trying to play the game, or play the sort of like role playing that I'm actually working for these. And I'm trying to, I've been told that I need to create a new environment or a few concept pieces for a new background or something. So I want to do that role playing. So I want to keep everything to fit the actual game. And I haven't played the second one, so I don't know how different it is from the first one. So that's gonna be interesting to see how that develop as I play it and work on this. But yeah, so that will be the first theme. After that, there's so much information in my head that I want to sort of put that in a visual way somehow. And you could choose however you want to do this. You could do this sculpting. You could do this on your sketchbook with pen and paper. However the medium you use, it doesn't really matter. But to me, I need to sort of like start putting down information visually, so I can sort of like making notes, but in a visual way, more graphic, to sort of like start gathering my ideas and organizing what I'm gonna end up doing. And so I'm in the middle of it right now, but I'm gonna do a few pages of these, and some compositional sketches, which is you guys are gonna see in a way of time lapse. But to be honest, this is like very simple process that usually nobody else's see. This is mostly, when I do this, this is mostly for me. And this is my way of gathering as much as I have in my mind into paper, and just trying to figure out and start refining and blocking what I'm gonna do. And a lot of this stuff I'm not gonna use. A lot of this stuff I will use. I might not use any of it, but I'm putting notes and sort of like organizing my thoughts for my next steps. And again, you could do this anyway, but I try to keep it very simple. One, maybe two values. Big shapes, notes, and I'll go from there. But I can see already. So like looking at this, and this is incomplete. You'll see when the time lapse comes. You're gonna see everything, but already I can look at this page and I say, okay, there's a few things here that I can definitely use. For example, I really like how this sort of structure looks. This could be like an actual sort of like artifact structure that gets open, type of like a gate thing. So I do like sort of like what's happening here with the shapes. I do want to have, since I'm making a 3D kit for it, I start making notes about things that I could start building. So maybe some wooden poles to make some piers and stuff, some different rock shapes and artifacts with light that can sort of like be interact with, and trying to see what those shapes are, like this one here and the ones on the side here. And I like to put a little dot or sort of like an indication of what the scale will be, so that way I have an idea. But all this is mostly like I do like this one, how simple it is. Maybe half of it is like underwater. So maybe that could be something that I could have as a focal point in one of the paintings. But just everything that comes into my mind when I'm thinking about it, I put it down. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just it needs to get put down, just so we can, visually see it later and maybe extract something from it, or just completely know what not to do or what to do. So, so it's actually a very there's a lot of freedom in this process, because there's no right or wrong. It's just you're just pretty much doing. And so I think that's extremely important, because not only as an artist you want to have that space where there is no right or wrong, especially if you're working in a working environment. you're just, being an artist, and that's the end of it. You're just doing stuff. But also, it also opens a lot of room to new ideas and new things that could be incorporated later, as you're working the project. And so, this process to me is one of the most important ones, especially to create that base, for whatever comes next afterwards. And so, yeah, so I will play the time lapse for this stuff, and some other sketches that I have. And again, keep it simple. Spend a few hours, and I don't like to spend, like, once I do one, I'll put it very small. I don't spend more than 2 3 minutes on it, and then I move to the next one, and I just keep creating more and more and more. The more the better is for this case. So I'll let that play, and then I'll see you guys on the next chapter.